Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I have some free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Now, today's ink I have in abundant sample form. It was provided by the wonderful, mysterious Benefactor. It's an Akkerman ink, and it's, I'm gonna butcher this, Garuda Rood. I've been told that the R-O-O-D actually sounds more like the way we pronounce R-O-A-D, so Garuda Rood. I don't know if I'm saying the Garuda part right, but yeah. It is, now, Rood or Road means red, so it's Garuda Red. And I don't know what Garuda is, but this looks so much like brick red, you know, where it's definitely red, but it's got sort of like that, yeah, like that clay brown hint to it. Yeah, so all the tests were done in these two pens. One is a JinHao and X450, and all my X450s have been broad and wet, and I love them for that. But it's not always fair, so I also use this Knox Avicenna with an extra fine nib. Now I would say that this is a European extra fine, but definitely an extra fine. Alright, thought I'd compare it to a few other inks. So here's Garuda Rood. It's very similar to Monaco Red. Now, I did not love Monaco Red because it is more like a brick brown, but yeah, it has some kind of similarities to Galileo Manuscript Brown by Noodlers, but that's mostly brown. And then it was also kind of reminiscent of Diatramentus Scented Cola, but this one has a more distinct separation from brown areas and red areas, which is cool, but yeah, so check out the chromatography. Now here's how you're supposed to do the chromatography, where you put the drop of ink and instantly dunk it in water. Now, part of what's really interesting here, if my camera will focus on what I want, you see how that's almost purpley? And then this almost, you know, it has some pink in it, and then goes into this sort of, I don't know, barn door red, and then into sort of more of a brick red, and then there's almost like a brown bit up at top. Then I let it dry, which is not how you're supposed to do it, and pretty much the only difference is this got more purple, and this got more pink, and everything just sort of moved more. So, fascinating. Paper test, top down in density, Clairefontaine, 90 grams per square meter. It's cool, right? I'm actually kind of digging this. Since finding out that Rood was red at the beginning, because I actually lived in the Netherlands for a couple months, yeah, I went into this expecting kind of a red, and you do get a kind of a red, but it's a brick red. You're not going to get like a straight red. It's going to have some texture to it. And here, I hope you can see this, you get a halo. And actually, I mean, this is micro thin, but it's actually, you get a tiny bit of sheen in this halo, and what's cool is it's an aqua color. I mean, it's almost blue, it's almost green, and it's shiny. I love that about this ink. And you get a lot of shading, which I like personally. I know not everyone does. Now, the extra fine took 10 seconds, but the broad and wet JinHao took 14, which is actually really impressive. So, yeah, all good stuff. No bleed, no feather, no spread. I said not much echo, really, but I mean, it's really dense paper, so yeah. Now, it did make a mess, and you kind of do see that purpley pink stuff going on. And then, yeah, I mean, it's really gone. So, water resistance, maybe not what you should buy it for. By the way, if you've never seen an Akkerman bottle, don't look it up, because they're awesome, and you will want one, and they're hard to find, so don't do it. You'll end up like me with like 6 bottles and not knowing what to do with them. But anyways, moving on. Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter. Here you definitely see more of that lovely shading. This really is a brick red, and it's a lovely color. Here again in the scrubby, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but you do get a dark halo. And again, in that micro thin halo, you get this aqua sheen. It's really a wonderful contrast. I wish I could get it on camera. Now the extra fine took 7 seconds. The broad and wet took 10. Which again is quite impressive because it's fairly broad, it's fairly wet, and this is fairly hydrophobic paper. So yeah, that was awesome. No bleed, no feather, no spread. I'd say there's no echo, but I mean, that's always a taste, you know, it's a personal thing. I really love the shading. Now, I'd say the flow, as I say here, is about 5.5 out of 10, which for me is perfect. I'm an amateur, so some of my pens have baby's bottoms, and sometimes when I try and correct it, it doesn't really work. So having something that will just come out of a pen that I don't have to flick, you know, or tap and fight is just great. So I really enjoyed that. But yeah, again, paper test, turned pink, turned purple, made a mess. Not awesome in that regard, but... Alright, next up, Tomoe River Paper, where I feel like the cream brought out a little bit more of the hint of brown. Maybe that's just me. But yeah, here I was really hoping to get some of that sheen so I could get it on camera and show it to you guys, but again, it's just like the tiniest little halos. I'm not going to get it on camera. But yeah, it's really gorgeous. I really enjoyed that. Now, because of this paper does tend to draw out dry times, which causes sort of an unusual type of pooling of the ink. So you get really, really wonderful shading. I mean, look at how light it is there versus how dark it can get. It's just lovely. But yeah, extra fine took 11 seconds. The broad and wet took 17, which again isn't bad. I mean, we've seen some broad nibs on here take 30 seconds, so let's be real. Yeah, very lovely. Echo is, of course, a personal thing. However, I would say that in the broad nib, it's a little more noticeable. See how that's a bit more noticeable than that? Yeah. So, something to be aware of. Now, this paper loves to let ink slide away when you add more water, and that is most certainly what happened here. A lot of it's gone. Dyed the page. Again, it's sort of a pinky purple. Fascinating. Now, for the next 3 tests, I only used the extra fine except to write the name. So, now, this is the world's worst 20-pound copier paper. So, I mean, between these two, you can see there's a very distinct broadening of the line, so there was a good deal of spread. It took 3 seconds to dry. However, I was expecting a lot worse. You do get a woolliness. You do get some very near feathers. Camera any day now. I guess you could call that feathers, but there's really not a ton. It's not these giant, huge feathers. And you don't get any full bleed. You get some very near bleed right around the edge, but I think that has to do with how poorly made this paper is. So that impressed me. I mean, we've seen extra fine bleed through on this paper. Now, this paper is more absorbent, so it sort of sucks the ink in, makes it harder to wash out. Again, sort of what's at the center is like that pinky purple, and then the red is washing off. But it did sort of feather and exploded to dye the page. It would not be the easiest task in the world to try and read that after dunking it in water. Next up is Mead Notebook Paper, where it took 2.5 seconds to dry. And where, again, this tends to happen. It outperformed the 20-pound copier paper, despite it being a thinner sheet of paper. I'm going to bring this in. Hopefully you'll see. You get like a mild woolliness, but you do not get feathers. There are no feathers. You still retain a little bit of shading, a tiny bit, which is just lovely. Now here I had to go over my words, so it got a little crazy, but yeah. Extra fine did really well. Okay, that was with the JinHao, so yeah, really, really well. I was impressed. Now this paper hates water, so it freaked out, but yeah. Because it's more absorbent, there's sort of more sucked in there that's hard to wash away. And again, what's at the center is that pink purple. Rather fascinating. And lastly is Moleskin Notebook Paper, where it did a lot better than I was expecting. Admittedly, I have very low expectations for Moleskin, but you can actually see you retain shading. There's some shading here. It took 7 seconds to dry, which I can't really explain because this tends to be absorbent paper. But yeah, there is a little bit of spread, but really not much. There are some feathers, but it's really this weird occasional feather where you'll see like 1 or 2, and they're not obscenely distracting. See that at the top of the J or the T, the N. You know, it's just one teeny little thing. It almost looks like it's like it wants to be a feather and hasn't like fully matured into it yet. It's quite lovely. However, there is some bleed. Not full bleed, it's just so close to making it to the other side. So that was one disappointment. However, I don't think I've written on the back of Moleskin ever. But yeah, so yeah. This paper does weird things with ink and water, so it absolutely exploded and feathered. I mean, I wrote that and I barely would know what it says if I didn't. But again, sort of pink and purple at the center, and the red is washing away, which is oddly fascinating. So, yep, there you go for your consideration. Akkerman's Garuda Rood. Yeah, I never learned to speak Dutch, but yeah. It's a really lovely color. It's a brick red, but it is a red. It's unique. Despite me having several samples, there's nothing quite like it. The flow is ready. It actually did much better than I expected on cheap paper, so long as you know, put it in the right pen. That aqua sheen, I gotta find a way to get that on camera someday, but just a lovely contrast. I mean, the aqua with the brick red, anyways, for your consideration from the Triple N Network, if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching. Bye.